friends. Welcome to Sky House Herbs podcast. I'm Ashley Elenbaas, a clinical herbalist, and in this space, I share my knowledge and experience with plant medicine to help you on your own journey of healing and transformation. Join me in exploring the ancient wisdom of plant spirit medicine and how it can be used to heal the body, mind, and spirit. We'll talk to experts in the field and share stories from people who've been transformed by powerful plant allies. New episodes are released each Monday, so please subscribe. And now, let's explore this mystical world of plant medicine together. Hey everyone, welcome in. I am a little fired up today, so I'm just going to warn you. Today's topic is plants, politics, and power. And with Venus recently moved into Aries, which is what it is in my birth chart, I've just been feeling really passionate about a lot of things, actually. And I just want to share that passion with you and share some positive and realistic views of where we're at right now in the world, and with politics and with plants and plant protection, and what we can do. So the purpose of today's talk is to give you some things to think about, to ponder, and then some actions, things that you can do so that you don't fall into a state of feeling helpless about the state of the world, because we don't need that. we don't have time for that right now. Right now is not the time to sit back and mope, but to act. And so I think I've put together a nice list of things that everyone can do to feel like you're moving into a seat of power, regardless of how much privilege you have or don't have. Okay. So before we go into today's passionate talk, I wanted to remind you, if you are new to my channel, well, welcome in. You're coming in hot to today's topic. I'm not always this fired up, but it is what it is. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please take a moment to subscribe to my channel. It will help it grow, help more people find me, so that we can all collectively do the work of this planet, which needs us right now. The world needs more people that are plant-centered and really acknowledge and respect this earth that we are living on. I also wanted to mention that I am starting my year 1 herbal apprenticeship course, which will be starting in April. So if you would like to study herbal medicine with me, I'm going to just hop over to our website real fast to show you where you can find out more and how you can study herbs in this year ahead. So if you go to skyhouseherbs.com, we can click on the courses and then find the Herbal Foundations Apprenticeship. So the early bird pricing is ending soon. So if you are interested in this, please consider signing up soon. You can click on any of these enroll now buttons, but this is a year-long in-depth study of plant-based medicine. And it will teach you everything from how to grow herbs, how to identify wild plants in nature, to making your own herbal medicines. And we do have opportunities for you to come and join our garden gatherings, which are free. So if you register for the course and you live nearby, or you're going to be in the Minnesota area over the summer, you can come and do some hands-on work with me. And here are all the details of the different modules, everything from immunity, reproductive health, digestive health, community gardening, and we will meet online once a month to talk and to hang out. And I love these. This is probably my favorite part of the course, is getting together for about 2 hours on one Saturday a month to just connect and talk about our practices and what's helping us in terms of our work with the plants. So you can click to here's the enrollment, different payment options. Early bird one-time fee is $9.99. Click on 12 payments, and those early bird payments will be $99.92 a month for 12 months. And if that is out of your price range, click on need-based pricing, and you can fill out this application here, and then click on the view pricing, and you'll see what you're eligible for. And from there, you go right into enrolling. And if you're not sure, if you're not ready to enroll and you click on the view pricing, no problem. You'll just need to fill out this form again to find that view pricing page another time. I also wanted to bring you over to We have a second-year apprenticeship. So if you've already studied with me, we're offering an 8-month deepening of your skills as an herbalist. And this is going to be geared towards people who are interested in either working clinically with clients, that are interested in community activism as an herbalist, and also people who are interested in medicine making. Enrollment is not quite open yet, so coming soon. Stay tuned. We will have that rolling out probably in the early spring. And then lastly, if you click on events, you can see all of the upcoming events. We have a spring equinox that is happening. You might miss this actually if you listen to this on Monday, but it's going to be this Saturday. I'm teaching an herbal workshop in March on March 30th, and then I'll be teaching at the North Country Herbalist Guild meeting and at the Midwest Women's Herb Conference. So check out all of these on the website at skyhouseherbs.com, and I'll be sure to include links. Oh, friends, look at where we are. All right, I just want to take a minute. This is one thing I do in all my herbal courses. Sometimes before we go into a subject, I like to take a moment to just pause and get rooted. So if you'll just take a moment here with me and maybe close your eyes if you can, feel your body, how it's connected to the earth. Find a few deep breaths. And I just like to locate myself in time and space, and especially in times where there's a lot happening. I mean, there's nothing better. And I teach this to my kids. I teach this to all of my herb students. Like, just stop, just take a moment, just stop yourself and settle in. Resource yourself with the breath, and maybe even if you can subtly feel the grounding of the earth, do that. And then let's open our eyes, take a stretch, and come together. And oh, friends, here we go. Let's talk. Let's talk about plants, politics, and power. So I know we are in some very unsettling, very turbulent times. And this is not new for this era that we're living through. And if you look at the astrology, I'm not an astrologer, but if you want to look at the astrology of what's going on right now, if that is helpful for you, I find the astrology to be very helpful. You can go to nightlightastrology.com, and you can listen to the daily content on my husband's YouTube channel, Nightlight Astrology. I'll include a link for you all so that you can find that easily. I also wanted to mention that these times are often called the Kali Yuga by the ancient yogis and by a lot of systems in India. They look at this particular time in human history as being the dark times. And, there's a lot of different historians and archaeologists, which I'll talk about in a minute, who look at these cycles of time from a very broad view. And it's very helpful for me to see that the dark times often birth the light times, and we're in this cycle. And even if our generation and our children's and 7 generations out don't get to experience the rebirth of the light, I find hope in knowing that at some point the tides will shift. Even if it's not in my lifetime, I understand that my life is a small yet significant part of this moment we're living in. But if I get discouraged thinking I won't get to experience it, therefore there's nothing I can do, that is not helpful. And I want the daughters of my daughters to know that they had a great, great ancestor who was doing the work, who was living the life and fighting the fight. And I encourage you to look back at your own ancestry, to look at your great, great grandmothers and really try to go back, and grandfathers. What were they doing? What was the work they were doing? Can you find stories? Can you find paper trails of their work and how they were a part of the times we're living in now? Like, what were their gifts to humanity at the time they lived? I know for me in Lithuania, my great great grandfather was a beekeeper and herbalist. And on the Czech side, my great great grandfather was a farmer. in the Czech Republic. And my great great grandmother, and my great grandfather's father, so I guess my great great grandfather was a shepherd in Sicily. And there's a lot of history of on my great great grandmother's side, of a lot of textile work and handcrafts and a lot of yeah sort of island culture music making. So I take refuge in that. I really do, because it's like the work I'm doing is not, it's not divorced from the work of my ancestors, nor will it be divorced of the work of my children. And even if we don't have children in this lifetime, the next generations who have been undoubtedly influenced by us in some way. So let's talk a little bit about politics, because I think this is, you know, I don't like politics. If I'm like the politics as they are in the world today, I get overwhelmed. I do. I want to be like the ostrich that sticks my head in the sand and it's like la 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 la. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to see it. I don't want to think about it. It is too much. And um, I have been over the last month, I think, getting clear about what I can do. Like I've been lifting my head out of the proverbial sands of numbing and, you know, like hiding, and things that are comfortable, to start to get uncomfortable again, because I think that's good. You know, we can't come out and fight any battles if we haven't resourced and grounded and nurtured ourselves in some way. We won't be able to do a good job. So I'm like, okay, I'm coming out, y'all. I'm coming out of the shell. I'm feeling resourced and I'm feeling like I have something to say about this. So here's what I have to say about politics. The etymology of the word politics comes from the ancient Greek language, from polis, which means city. And so, like, I live in Minneapolis. So, polis is a city. So, polis means city. Politices means citizen. So, politics in some ways is just the workings of the city and the citizens who are part of it. And like that feels manageable to me. Like, okay, so if politics is just the action of the citizens in their cities, like, okay, you know what? I live in this city that I care a lot about. I left Minneapolis when I was 5. My parents moved because of their work. And now I'm back. I moved back at 38, I think. Was that 38? I don't know, late 30s. I moved back to the city of my ancestors, of my grandparents, of my parents, my grandparents. So I go a few generations back on this particular land in this particular city. And I feel like I can do something here. Now, can I save the United States? No, but I can do something here. So I think if that helps you, I'm glad. So to be involved in politics just simply means to be a citizen of your city and to do something there. Now, we start to see the word politics becoming more about governing when Aristotle wrote Ta Politica in the 4th century in Greece. And Aristotle was a philosopher. He was an astronomer, but he was mainly a philosopher. And what he wrote about in Ta Politica was the affairs of state. It was a book of governing and governments and an inquiry into ethics, leading into a discussion of politics. So what Aristotle was starting to look at is, how do ethics and how does the morality of a city influence how it is governed? And the idea here is on the positive side. So how do we allow ethics and moral obligations to the people to create systems of how we govern those people? I love this. I think this is very wise. Starting from morality is really, I think, where politics shines, is how do we as citizens run our cities in a way that upholds the rights and the ethical obligations and you know, upholding our sort of our highest selves, right? In the way that we run our governments or run our cities. We don't see the word politics becoming part of the vernacular or part of the common language until the mid 15th century when Aristotle's work was translated into English. And so we start to see this idea of politics and politicos. And, it's not like there wasn't politics between the fourth century Greece and the 15th century. Oh, yeah. I mean, politics was a thing: kings, queens, rulership, wars over territories. All of that was still happening. But we start to see a real leaning into this idea of governing as a business. So I wanted to read this to you. This was a quote from Fisher Ames, who grew up in an old family of prestige in Boston. And here is what he said. I want to read a few things of what he said because this is so helpful to me. So Fisher Ames lived 1758 to 1808. And here is what he said: politics is the science of good sense applied to public affairs, and as those are forever changing. So the science of good sense, he says, both applied to public affairs, and those are forever changing. What is wisdom today would be folly and perhaps ruin tomorrow. Politics is not a science so properly as a business. That was really helpful for me to hear. So it's like, why do I abhor politics as I see it today? Well, because it's actually not about citizens governing the majority of people in a city, but it's about a business model. Like politics is a business. Okay, well, that's helpful. All right. From which a wise man. Okay, let me say this. Okay, politics is not a science so properly as a business. It cannot have fixed principles from which a wise man would never swerve, unless the inconstancy of men's view of interest and the capriciousness of the tempers could be fixed. So, what Ames is saying is that we cannot fix the tempers or the temperaments or the greed or the moral conviction of man. Man's view is constantly changing. It is not a fixed thing. So here's something else that he said that I thought was really interesting. So I started going deeper into what his work was. And here's what he said. Okay. He says, a democracy cannot last. Its nature ordains that its next change should be into a military despotism. The reason is that the tyranny of what is called the people and that by the sword both operate alike to debase the corrupt till there are neither men left with the spirit to desire liberty, nor morals with the power to sustain justice. Gosh, it's like, shit. Sorry. He says, likewise, Ames warned his countrymen of the dangers of flattering demagogues. And I was like, well, what's a demagogue? So I looked that up. You'll love this. So he says, we need to be careful not to flatter the demagogues. Demagogues are political leaders who seek support by appealing to the desires and prejudices of ordinary people rather than by using rational argument. So basically, a demagogue rhetorically exploits an issue for political purposes, and they seek to devise and separate the people. So he says, our country is too big for union, too sordid for patriotism, too democratic for liberty. What is to become of it? And then he says, capital H, he who made it knows best. Its vice will govern it, practicing upon its folly. This is ordained for democracies. So I just like, there's so much there that I like, just like, oh, do you feel me? Are you like, it's, this is not new. The situation we're in right now is not different from where we were a few hundred years ago. Is that people are coming into power who are using rhetoric and prejudice to divide the people. and to, in some ways, stop us and to make us meek and to make us somehow so overwhelmed and overburdened and looking at the things that are not actually of high value or importance, so that we lose our desire for liberty and we lose our desire for true democracy, whatever that means, which I'm still unclear, because the people who seek, the original democracy was the people all having a voice. And it basically, this idea of like the citizens informing the state, the citizens informing the law. But when the citizens can't agree on anything, then there is no democracy, because we're all fighting, we're infighting, we're tearing each other down in the city. And living in Minneapolis after the riots, I mean, this is what a great example of the city destroying itself, the city taking down some of the people who were helping the city, and people who are here to protect the city hurting the citizens of the city. It's like, look at what we're doing, y'all. We're tearing ourselves apart. And I'm tired of it. I think it's we can do better. We can do way better. Okay, so what do? I feel like by the grace of God, because even Ames said, only he or she, I don't know, God, the God of my understanding is neither he nor she. The God of my understanding is they, is the divine masculine and feminine sitting together. Maybe in one body, maybe in separate. I don't know, but it is a very clear blending of the he and she, the feminine and masculine. So that God that I connect to, that I know as a friend, as an ally, knows where we're going. And that God has given me so many breadcrumbs and so many clues over the last month. I feel so impassioned to share with you. So the first one I want to share is the work of Marija Gimbutas. And so Marija Gimbutas is a Lithuanian archaeologist and anthropologist. And it's funny because my grandfather is Lithuanian and she grew up in Vilnius, the same town that my grandfather's family grew up from. And they had to flee because of the Soviet Union invasion. So my great grandparents had to flee with just what they had on their backs through a river. And she actually has a similar story of having to flee with her husband. So she got her like PhD, her master's, despite having to live in different countries and put together her degrees, and she got a job at Harvard, not paid, to be a researcher and a teacher, and then went to the UCLA where she was a paid teacher. She led over 15 archaeological digs throughout old Europe, everywhere from like Lithuania and the Baltic region through Italy and Greece, and sort of basically what we call the old European, around the Adriatic Sea and the Baltic Sea. And her work was centered on the Neolithic era or the Bronze Age era. And this is really important, guys, and gals, this is really important because what she discovered during that time, to me, tells me what to hold on to right now. What she discovered was that throughout this entire region, a huge amount of space, there was, for about 4,000 years, all of these different civilizations had a matriarchal centered way of life that was peaceful, and there was not war. What she found was that in these little civilizations and communities were figurines of the goddess, like this one, like these ones. I mean, thousands upon thousands of artifacts of the divine feminine, with animal and water and earth and stone and hills, like all of these different images of the land earth goddess connection, and that they didn't have infighting. So imagine we're taught in human history that human, have always been warring. And she said, no, that is not true. There was 4,000 years. That was 30 to 40 generations of humans that lived peacefully, that traded among different tribes and different groups, but did not have wars or fighting as we have seen them today. So I'm going to just pause this for 1 minute. My daughter's coming up the stairs, but I will grab this conversation. We'll be right back. Thank you for your patience. This is what we do as women, and as parents, is we have to pause our passions sometimes to tend to the things we love, and to take a moment for caretaking the next generation. So, okay, let's get back into it. So yeah, so they didn't find any evidence of weaponry that would have been used in warfare for that whole Neolithic and during that era. They didn't find it in the artwork. And what did the people do in these villages? Well, number one, she said the thing that she learned that touched her heart the most was that these people lived in very organized villages, in beautiful places. They were deeply connected to nature and the natural world and the symbols of the stars and the animals and the plants that lived around them. And they experienced sort of what we would consider the golden age of art. I mean, look at some of these. This is another one of Maria's books. I mean, just beautiful, beautiful pottery that they made, stones. They would paint just images from nature of the goddess. And they actually, what she kind of said too was like they had their own language. So if you want to learn the ancient language of all these symbols, she actually decodes it in her book. So I'll make sure to include links to these books so that you can get your hands on them. But they had beautiful, high level art, music, and what this is something also that's really interesting is that all of these villages were matriarchal. So they had like a high priestess who sort of led the group. Then they had a group of women that served as the council for the high priestess. And then that sort of priestess, and this is just lack of a better word, we don't know what they called them or how they actually viewed them, as much as they were sort of like, they were looked to as almost these particular women stood out in the community as figureheads of the divine goddess that brings birth and death and the cycles of the seasons and harvest. They were agricultural communities. So, they saw this woman as being sort of like higher and connected to the spiritual goddess in some way. And so she was held up in that way. And then she had a council of women around her. But then either her brother or her uncle or someone in her family line that was male would also help her rule. And the men were often in charge of trading or ports or setting up septic or waterways. They were a little bit more architectural, like they were given the task of implementing more of the physical maintenance and trade maintenance between the villages, but they were high up too. And what she said, her first degree, I think it was her bachelor's of science, was in the funeral rites and burial traditions in this ancient period. And she said what's so interesting is that, that men and women were seen as equal, even though there was this sort of priestess and, court of women that were organizing and leading a lot of it. Men and women were buried equally. And that is something very unique to that period, because we see that men and women, or she found that men and women were buried with the same types of things in the same way. that not one was higher or lower than the other. And we start to see, like in ancient Rome and other civilizations that came after this, that we start to see, men, we start to see tombs and like these sort of like really big, grandiose funeral arrangements for people that were of power. And in Egypt, obviously, like there was Queen Cleopatra who had a huge, pyramid. So, but in this old Europe area, this particular area of the world, men and women were, they worked together. Each of their values and skills were utilized in the villages and in these small towns. And there was not, when they were buried, they were the same, and we start to see in later times, like in ancient Greece and other, as things go on, women are often buried with very little, and the men were often buried with much more, which tells us about status. But at this time, men and women they had equal status in the community and under the eye of the God of their understanding. So I just find such solace in hearing that, thinking, okay, humans could live like that. We could live like that. Like that is possible. Maybe not today. And I know that there's like communities and intentional communities. I visited them in Asheville. I mean, I'm no stranger to the types of communities people are creating out there. So, like it's possible. But I just know for myself, thinking about what's possible for future generations, like I'm hopeful. Like that, I don't know if that helps you, but it helps me to anchor myself in knowing that if life is cyclical, that is something that can be returned to. Okay. So what do we do? What do we do? This is the part that I really wanted, that this is like the action. This is like what I think we can all do, is two things, and they have to be equal. One is not higher than the other. So the first thing that we have to do is prayer. And I mean it. Like this is not like woo stuff. Because when we pray, we connect to what is at our centermost self. And what we need when we pray, when I say pray, I mean we need to be connected to the source of the God of our own understanding. And that's something you have to do on your own. Like I can't give that to you, and no one else can give that to you. You have to find that. You have to find who that, what that, how that is in yourself. And through the practice of prayer, we connect back to that in every moment. So for me, when I think of the God of my understanding, and I like sit in reverence of that being, I am experiencing myself as a different type of person. So we need to take that seriously and stay connected, because it's kind of like what Ames said about this, like the ethics, and what Aristotle was pointing to is like there is an ethical center that we all deep down, if we access the spiritual nature of ourselves, there are things we can agree on, like a lot of things actually that we would agree on. So if we can all find that in ourselves, stay connected, talk to that place inside of us every single day. And then here's the second part that is equally as important, is we act on it. We practice it. We go out into the world and we practice what it is that we are connecting to from our spiritual center. Then we are going to be walking, acting, behaving, and making ripples of change in a way that is universally resonant, that other people will feel. And if they see you doing it, then they're going to be like, maybe I can do this. And it doesn't have to be like an overt thing, right? Like you don't have to like yell from the mountaintops, like, here's what you do. I mean, you can, if that's your calling. But if you just act in your own local community, in your own city, based on that strong sense of knowing and that deep prayer that you're reciting in every single breath, it will start to make changes. Like it will, it has already. So here's what I wanted to say, a few things that we can do together. We know right now that federal funding has been pulled for many different organizations, huge ones like USAID, which is helping people in other countries with really terrible food shortages, water shortages, sicknesses, illness, AIDS. I mean, right? So we know that the funding is being pulled for these humanitarian organizations, as well as tariffs being put on goods that are coming in and out of the United States from Canada and our brothers and sisters in Mexico. So it's like, okay. So here's what we can do is we can start to put our resources into the organizations that we resonate with based on our prayer practices. So I want to give you a few ideas. United Plant Savers is an organization I have been, donating to and have been a part of as a member for, I think, over maybe 12 or 13 years now. I'm going to include a link for all of these organizations. So here's what I think we need to do is find organizations that we can give a little bit to. And I'm not saying like you have to give half your paycheck, like don't be a martyr and like hurt yourself. But if, start to pull back your money from things that are frivolous, from things that don't matter, from things that are just, like comforts. We all have at least $5 a month that we can give, that we could take from a Starbucks or take from a breakfast sandwich or take from an Amazon spend. We all have $5 a month that we can look inside of ourselves and say, I want to connect and give to this organization. So United Plant Savers protects native medicinal plants here in North America, protects them in their native habitats. They've been around for a long time. I visited their center in Ohio. They're amazing. So I am going to be donating to them as part of my practice in the year ahead. The Center for Plant the Center for Plant Conservation, the CPC, is another great organization. They save endangered rare species, and they have the largest collection of endangered and rare plants on, in this world. So they are actually like the storehouse for rare and exotic and endangered plants. So they have had federal funding pulled from them. So we can give them $5 a month. The U.S. Park Services, we all know how important it is for us to have maintenance in our U.S. In our park system for both trails and campgrounds, making sure birds, our endangered birds and animals have habitats that are sustained and sustainable for them, waterways that are kept clean, right? So we can maybe give $5 to them. So far we've only given $15 out of our pocket a month, and that's just a few cups of coffee. Honestly, it's not that much, because like we as the people have to start protecting the plants and the people. So that's one action. The other action that I think we can all do is volunteer locally. Get active locally. So for example, there are local plant conservation and seed protection groups in every single city and in a lot of small towns across the United States. So if you want to look at, there's the National Seed Strategy, which is an organization under the Bureau of Land Management. I'll include a link. You can go to their website and search your local area and find your own local chapter of seed conservationists and get involved. Start to figure out ways that you can go and create your own seed banks, or start, planting wildflowers in open areas that were maybe once wastelands or dumps. There's so much we can do locally. There is in Minnesota, there's a great organization called Walk on Teepee. And Walk on Teepee serves like the St. Paul area, and they do a lot of work with the indigenous Lakota people and the Dakota, and they help to do seed preservation, and they also lead a lot of local indigenous events and workshops. They have a huge fundraising campaign every year, and I've donated every year to them and done their silent auction. And I just signed up to be a volunteer for doing a local cleanup. So you can actually volunteer through them and be a leader to lead a local cleanup or seed gathering in your own neighborhood. So that's like easy, like you can do that. Another thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to lead my small group plant gatherings once a month over the non-frigid months of the year here in Minnesota. I'm going to continue to teach free classes to the community at local schools and preschools about plants and medicinal plants. So we can get active in our local community. And that is how we can have political power, is we can be on the ground in our communities. You can volunteer also at a local arboretum, set up. I know a lot of places in DC and on the East Coast have small garden plots that you can rent, and you can get involved with growing food for local food banks or local restaurants that have programs set up to feed those who are unable to get access to vegetables. There's actually a lot we can do. But we have to stay connected to that spiritual center to get the wheels turning and to stay connected to a source of inspiration. Because if we are relying on the external forces to tell us what to do, and if we are trying to look to the culture that we live in, which I'm not super impressed with, most of it these days, then we're not going to get that continuous inspiration. It's got to come from an inside source. So that's where the prayer and the action go hand in hand. Daily spiritual practice and prayer, connecting to that wellspring of unlimitless love, compassion, energy, and enthusiasm, and hope and faith. That is what is going to help us have continuous action and be able to continually feed the fire that we need to have right now, because we are not in a good place. And it's heavy if you let it become overwhelming. So that is what I have for you all today. I understand I am a human, and I am working on my own humanness and my own contradictions every day. It is hard to live in the modern world without having to make choices that don't feel like they're 100% aligned with your ethical and moral values. And at the same time, we can't let that paralyze from doing things that are really going to actually make a difference. So I just want to encourage you, even if you feel like you can't move off grid and start a commune, like most of us honestly cannot do that. If you're living in the world and you're being held by the culture that you are a part of, you can still do something. You can still do something. You can still get dressed in the morning. And my daughter actually picked out this outfit for me. Isn't this fun? I told her, because she's home from school sick today. She was like, what do I do? Because I was like, you can't watch TV all day. I was like, why don't you help me get dressed? So she picked out this outfit, and I think she did a good job. So anyway, I don't know why I said that, but I just wanted to say, even getting your daughters involved in small things, and getting them away from things that are not great for them, giving them some agency and some power and some control. It matters. All of it matters. So anyway, y'all, thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting my channel, and please leave your feedback and comments. If you're feeling like you're starting to access this Venus and Aries sort of like warrior goddess energy, let me know. Let me know what you're doing or what you'd like to do. This can be a safe place for you to just explore the maybes without having to feel like you have to commit to something in order to speak up. So just, write in the comments some of your ideas. And that's a great place to get the spark, started. All right. So look for the links in the description below to all of these different resources, references to get you started. And please share your own resources and references too. All right. Thank you all. Have a great day.